Why, hello there, my Tanukers. How are you doing? Now, I know I don't normally do movie reviews, but I thought I could make an exception for Sonic the Hedgehog because it is video game related, obviously. First of all, this is a spoiler-free review, and all the footage I'll be playing for the video is just footage from the trailers, so don't worry about that. So, of course, I said it's video game related because it's none other than Sonic the Hedgehog. Not only is it video game related, but it is the best video game to movie adaptation. Even though Detective Pikachu came out somewhat recently, relatively recently, and I did like Detective Pikachu, but in terms of it being faithful to the source material, Sonic the Hedgehog was very faithful to the source material while still introducing original ideas. I liked that it was faithful enough to the source material, but still left enough room for creative freedom. So that way, when I was watching the movie, it didn't feel like I already knew what was going to happen, because if they were to just adapt a story directly from a Sonic game one-to-one, it would feel like you've seen it already, and it wouldn't be too interesting. So I really like the balance of what they had between source material and original stuff. And not only does it have a lot of respect for the source material in it, but there are so many nods and references to the Sonic franchise, so obviously if you're a longtime Sonic fan like myself, you're going to appreciate a lot of it. And it doesn't feel so shoehorned in. It doesn't feel like it's some corporation. It doesn't feel like it's some brand saying, "Hello, my fellow youth," because I recently watched the Doom movie, not Doom Annihilation. Well, I watched that one too, but then after watching Doom Annihilation, I wanted to compare it to the older Doom movie with The Rock in it, and it wasn't terrible. At least it seemed okay compared to Doom Annihilation, but the reason I bring it up is because all of the video game references in the Doom movie with The Rock felt shoehorned in the sense that when they were making the movie, they had a big checklist of things that they wanted to reference from the game to justify it being called a Doom movie. And it did not feel like that in Sonic the Hedgehog at all. It actually felt sincere. But along with all the nods and references to video game material, there were also a lot of pop culture references and a lot of product placement. Obviously, take that as you will. The product placement and pop culture references are sort of annoying to me just because I'm not a big pop culture guy, but even if you were to not know the pop culture references, it still would probably not be egregious. That's what I'm saying. Several pop culture references, so if you're the one to appreciate that sort of thing, then you'll probably like that. But if you're not a big pop culture guy like me, you'll probably just roll your eyes like I did. Also, my next point, it is surprisingly similar to Sonic X. I was getting some major Sonic X vibes, and I'm glad that I rewatched some of Sonic X recently because they recently put it on Netflix for anyone that wants to go watch that. And so first of all, it's like Sonic X in the sense that the first time I started getting Sonic X vibes was when the government got involved, because whenever I think of Sonic X, I think of how the human government gets involved with trying to catch Sonic, and, well, even more obvious than that, both in Sonic X and in this Sonic the Hedgehog movie, Sonic starts out in his homeworld and gets teleported to Earth, right? So both Sonic X and this movie are similar in that sense, and then you have the government going after him, but there were also some other things that were very specific, though. Like, for example, in Sonic X, at least in the first few episodes, Dr. Robotnik, when he wants to send a robot after Sonic the Hedgehog, the monster of the week, so to speak, he will have a hard time deciding which robot he wants to pick, and so he has this elaborate roulette. He has this elaborate sort of roulette system that picks a robot for him to help him decide who to send. And there was a part in the movie, no big spoilers of course, but when Dr. Robotnik was choosing a drone to send after Sonic, he was standing in sort of this hologram. He had this holographic HUD around himself, and he was trying to choose what to send after Sonic, and he said, eeny, meeny, miny, something like that, right? Like, he was trying to pick which thing to send after him, and it just was very uncanny to something very specific in Sonic X, so I'd imagine that when they were making this movie, they might have watched Sonic X just to sort of get ideas, to see what's been done, hasn't been done, maybe just, like I said, to get ideas. But anyways, my point is, if you like Sonic X, you'll probably enjoy this, like I did. But, Chris is obviously the worst part of Sonic X, and I can definitely say that instead of Chris, we get an adult cop as the main character, who serves as sort of a, he and Sonic sort of have a buddy cop dynamic, which is much better than whatever kind of relationship Sonic had with Chris in Sonic X. So, speaking of the main character, the cop, the casting's actually very good. Sonic's voice actor does a great job. Obviously, like I said, his buddy cop dynamic works pretty well for the movie. And Jim Carrey actually does a good job as Dr. Robotnik. I remember when I originally heard that, just initially, before I saw any footage or anything, just the announcement that he would be Robotnik, I thought it was very strange, just because, well, first of all, Dr. Robotnik is probably a difficult character to cast in the first place, but as I started to see trailers, I started to warm up to the idea a bit more, and I can actually say it actually works pretty well, especially the whole trio of the main character, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Dr. Robotnik. I'm glad that they didn't try to involve any other major characters. Obviously, there are side characters that make their appearances, but just having that main trio propel the story worked out very well, especially because the movie isn't that long. It feels very fast-paced, and so it serves to be very focused on just a small cast of characters. Speaking of Dr. Robotnik, not only is he cast well in this, but just in terms of his characterization, just from a direction standpoint and from a writing standpoint, he has these gloves. So, obviously, if you've seen the trailers, or if you've just seen bits of promotion for the movie, Dr. Robotnik has drones, just like how Dr. Robotnik has an army of robots in the source material, right? And he controls these drones remotely. He controls, they're remote-controlled drones, right? But instead of it just being some sort of conventional controller or something like that, he wears what makes me think of a power glove. And so he has these buttons and controls on these gloves that he's wearing, but instead of it being on the back side of his hand, like on the power glove, it's on his palm, which makes a lot more sense, right? And so he's sort of able to move his fingers around and press these buttons and arrows on his palms. And so there are scenes where he's talking, and instead of it just being a shot of him talking, it's a shot of him talking, and he's emoting. He's essentially doing this crazy emoting with his hands because he's controlling these drones. And so the drones very much feel like an extension of Dr. Robotnik. So even in the scenes where Dr. Robotnik is not in the shot, technically, in the scenes where it's just the drones, where it's Sonic and his cop friend running from the drones, it feels like Dr. Robotnik really is there in the scene, because like I said, the drones feel like an extension of him, and so he has a very heavy presence. He feels very all-encompassing, which is a very good thing for a villain to be. So, I already mentioned some of the cinematography and shots. There were some actually pretty cool shots, especially in the final act near the end. There were some shots where I thought, wow, if these clips ever go to YouTube, I want to pause it during these shots and just look at it for a bit longer, because there were some cool ones, especially what they do with the lighting and colors and everything, like these contrasting colors into the lighting. And another thing that I thought was pretty cool, early on, so basically, Sonic's character arc starts with him being extremely lonely, right? Because he's trying not to be discovered by the government, so he has to live in hiding. And during this time, to entertain himself on his lonesome, he basically plays multiple characters just to entertain himself. Sort of like an imaginary friend, almost like this dissociative personality disorder to an extent, but obviously he's self-aware of this. And so he'll have a dialogue with himself by portraying these different characters he makes up on the spot. So he'll run from spot to spot, right? So for example, you know, he'll be the batter and the pitcher, right? So he'll be the pitcher, he throws the ball, then he runs over and hits the ball, and then he'll run back and try to catch it. And when it's initially showing the audience this, it shows him running back and forth, right? Visually, it shows him running back and forth to these spots, so you get the idea of what he's doing. But after doing that a certain amount of times, the shots will actually just skip from shot to shot without showing him running between the two spots. And so it literally is shot like a scene with multiple characters, even though it's all just Sonic the Hedgehog. And so I thought that was funny when it started doing that, because it started to make it feel like this is actually a scene with multiple characters, and this must be how it feels in his head, or at least what he's trying to get across to himself. But that's just a little touch I liked. I noticed that because obviously it would be a waste of screen time for them to just keep showing him run back and forth after the audience very much gets the idea. So I would say that's the majority of my thoughts on the movie. Like I said, I like it a lot. I very much enjoyed it. It's the best video game to movie adaptation there is, which is, I know that's not saying a lot just because video game to movie adaptations are usually bad, but honestly, it's just all around good. And also, I have to say, there is a post-credit scene, so stick around after the credits, because there's a post-credit scene. I always stick around after the credits for post-credit scenes anyway, but I was not expecting what was shown in the post-credit scene. I was not expecting. I don't want to spoil it for you, so you'll just have to see for yourself. It's sort of sequel baiting, but sequel baiting or not, I just appreciate that it was in there. And anyways, of course, if you've seen the movie yourself, share your thoughts, and I will see you later.